Nothing in this podcast or on our website should be construed as medical advice. Consult your healthcare provider for your individual nutritional and medical needs. The information presented is based on our research and is strictly that of the author and not necessarily those of any professional group or other individual.
Hi, I'm Sue Becker from Bread Beckers. Welcome to Sue's Healthy Minutes. I'm so excited you've joined me today, and I hope this episode encourages you and allows you to find the answers you have been praying for the health of you and your family. Today on Sue's Healthy Minutes, I am beyond excited to have a very special guest share her personal story. So if you listened on my last episode, I read to you a testimony shared with me by Dr. Ben Edwards of a mother of two girls, one with a history of seizures, the other with brittle bone disease. Well, to my amazement, the parents of these two young girls actually heard the podcast and wrote to thank me for sharing it and mentioned that they would love to share with me their whole story. I knew it would be a great follow-up to last week's episode, so I reached out immediately to see if we could work out an interview this week. And I'm so thankful that we were able to do just that. In case you missed it, I will read to you the little bit of this testimony that I read in last week's episode. It was in a text to me from Dr. Ben Edwards. He had just completed a presentation in Midland, Texas. And after the talk, my guest today, Kayleah Gregory, came up to him and shared a tiny bit of her story. Here is what was in that text that I read to you last week. Dr. Edwards shared, two of the testimonies were from one young mom. One of her little girls has epilepsy, on seizure medication, and would still have breakthrough seizures. In the past 12 months of eating fresh meal bread, 0 seizures. Her other daughter has brittle bone disease and has had 30 fractures in her first 3 years of life. But after 12 months of fresh meal bread, she has had 12 months of fracture-free living. Praise be to God. So that was the end of his text. And it is with my great pleasure now to introduce to you Kayleah Gregory, the mom of these two beautiful girls. Kayleah, thank you for coming on such short notice. I'm glad our schedules worked out. And I know everyone, including myself, can't wait to hear your story. But before we dive into that, why don't you share just a little bit about yourself, your family, and where you're from?
Thank you, Sue. I'm so glad to be here. I didn't know that I would have It's a Bread story one day. And so me and my husband have been married for 10 years. We're from Odessa, Texas, and we have two little girls. They are 8 and 4.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So in Dr. Ben Edwards' text to me, I think he said you had been milling flour and making bread for your family for about a year. So tell us a little bit, how did you get started and what led you to milling your own flour?
So at this point, it's actually been 2 years.
2 years. Okay.
Yes. So I worked for a pediatric dentist for about 13 years. And there was a mom in the practice, and she had 12 kids. And she would come in and she would talk about how she just made everything homemade and they milled their own flour. And she ended up starting up her own little bakery. She just had the best bread and donuts, and she would bring us things. And she was always educating us. And I was so fascinated by her that she could just feed all 12 kids homemade meals every night. And I just thought she was like Superwoman or something. But I just never thought that fresh milled flour was in the cards for me. It just didn't seem like something I could do. And my mom had a cousin. She was a patient of Ben Edwards, and she had heard about the fresh milled flour through him. And, she would try to talk to me about the benefits of fresh milled flour, and she thought that it may help us. And I just thought, this is too much. I could never do this as a working mom. And I did have experience with baking. I used to run a little cookie business, and but I'd never made a loaf of bread, and I just didn't think it was even possible. And then about 2.5 years ago, my husband had sent me and my family a podcast talking about folic acid and the effects that it has on the brain. And I'll get in a little bit about my daughter's issues, but you did mention she has epilepsy, and because of the talks that I had had with these women, I just knew that we could never go back to eating store-bought bread again. And so I reached out to both of them, and both of them sent me to your podcast. And Sawyer, she's a patient at Scottish Rite in Dallas, and me and my mom spend lots of time in the car traveling back and forth to Dallas and to different appointments. And we just binged all your podcast while we drove, and it just became very apparent that this is what we needed to do. And I'm a biology major, and so it was all just really interesting to me and fascinating, and it just made sense and how beneficial it could be to our health and the things that have been done to flour today. And the Christmas is right around the corner, and I asked for a meal, and my dad is a very all in person. So as soon as I asked, all the Amazon boxes started coming. And um, for Christmas, I had grains and buckets and bread maker and a mill, and I just got started. And so I made my first loaf of bread Christmas 2023.
Wow. What an amazing dad.
Yeah, yes,
Everybody's
yes,
going, oh, I wish I had a dad like that because
yes,
you need to adopt me.
yes,
That's amazing. So you went all in. You were
yes,
all in. You got that from your dad.
yes,
Oh, wow. That is amazing. So that was Christmas of 2023. So you're right. It's been
yes.
about 2 years now.
Uh-huh.
So tell me a little bit about your girls. Give us a little background of their health history and what was going on with them.
Sutton is our oldest. She's now 8. She had her first seizure right after her first birthday. At the time, we were living out pretty far in the country, and I was home by myself, and she stopped breathing. She turned blue. And as a new mom, it was terrifying to me. I just
I
didn't.
can imagine.
And so for the first seizure, they called a febrile seizure, but then she kept having them, and she was having them about every month. And we finally got a diagnosis of epilepsy, and they did, multiple MRIs and all the things. And at the time, they transferred her to Lubbock, and then we ended up finally getting into Cook's with a neurologist there, and they put her on medication 2 times a day. And then she had a rescue medication that we always kept with her. And I always just wanted to help her. I wanted the seizures to stop. They were so scary. And so we cut out dyes. We cut out lots of sugar. We always made sure she was going to bed on time, getting plenty of rest, never skipped naps. And the seizures weren't stopping. They changed her medicine multiple times, and they would tell me, well, we think she'll outgrow them by the age of 3. And then 3 came, and they were like, well, maybe 5. And 5 came, and they were like, well, maybe next year. And then it came, maybe 12. And it really just started to feel like this wasn't going to happen for us. We were just going to have seizures. Um, and so then Sawyer, she's our youngest. And while I was pregnant with her, she's now 4. And they kept telling me that she was measuring super small and her long bones were super short. And when I was pregnant with Sutton, we had the same issues, and they called it IUGR. And she was born, she was super tiny, but she was perfectly healthy. She was full term, and we didn't have any complications after that. And so I just kept saying, oh, it'll be fine. I just have little babies and she'll be
Yeah.
great. And so 2 weeks before I delivered her, they found 2 broken femurs in utero. And then they saw her tibias and fibulas were bowed like they had been broken previously and had healed in utero. And so those 2 weeks were a long 2 weeks of just not knowing. And she was delivered via C-section in Odessa, and then they airlifted her to Lubbock, and she spent a few weeks in NICU there, and they did all the genetic testing, and we couldn't hold her. She had this like little gel pillow that she had to lay on, and if we held her, we had to hold her on the pillow because she would break so easily. And she during delivery, they had broken a few ribs and things like that, so she was in pain, as a newborn. And the genetic testing came back and said that she had a rare genetic disorder called Osteogenesis Imperfecta. It's also known as Brittle Bone Disease. And it was a random genetic mutation in her. We don't have anybody in our family that has it. Me and my husband, neither one have ever broken a bone. And they called it severe type 3. And So within her first 3 years of life, she had over 30 broken bones, and 9 of those were femurs. So we were always in a big spica cast, or, her whole would go all the way from her chest all the way to her ankles, and multiple surgeries. They told us she probably wouldn't walk. And she did become really good using her little wheelchair. And there was just lots of prayers prayed over both of my girls. And
I can imagine. I'm sorry, I'm tearing up just
yeah.
hearing this. Oh man, wow! What a journey! What a walk you've been through with both of your girls. So, wow. Whew, hang on, I gotta. Wow. So you introduced the bread 2 years ago. So they would have been 6 and 2 at the time. Is that right?
Yes. And
Okay.
when we started the bread for Sutton. We were like, we are going to fix her seizures. We don't need to have folic acid anymore. We just, Sawyer had a genetic condition and it has no cure. We just thought that's how it would be.
Right.
And we had no intentions of helping Sawyer at all. We were just going to help Sutton, but we were all going to do it because we knew it was healthy for the all of us.
For those listening, you're referring to the MTHFR gene mutation, are you? That the folic
Yes.
acid, the synthetic folic acid that is in our enriched flour products, they are finding now is causing significant health issues. And that's amazing that you found that connection. So milling your own grain eliminates that. You're getting the real folate that your body absolutely has to have. So you went into this thinking maybe the bread would help Sutton. And so you introduced the bread, milling your own grain, making your own bread for your family. So tell us, how has this helped?
At the beginning, we noticed like they just quit snacking. I wasn't having
Yeah.
all these. They would eat their 3 meals a day and they were happy. And I was like, well, this is awesome. And Sutton had always struggled with a little bit of constipation. That went away. And they were always sick. We had strep all the time. And, we were always on antibiotics. We would catch every little cold and flu and everything that went through the school. And we always had it all. And since starting Fresh Milk Flour, they get a little sick every now and then. It'll last about 24 hours. They may run a fever, but it goes away. It doesn't stay anymore. We haven't been on an antibiotic since. That was kind of the first things we noticed. That was really awesome.
Wow. So chronic antibiotics before bread, now
Yes,
2 years,
right.
none, right? Yeah. Sick
Yeah.
here and there. That's what I tell people. That's what we noticed in our family. It wasn't that we never got sick, but it was much less. It was much less frequent, and we
Yes.
rarely needed a doctor. And that was, and certainly not antibiotics. I mean, if we had to have them.
Yeah.
They're a lifesaver. I get that, but you don't want to just have to live that way. So that's amazing. And all right, I'm going to interject here just a minute. How much bread were you eating? How were you feeding your family? Was it every meal?
Yes,
that's
we do
what
every
we did.
meal. Our snacks are fresh milled. We make pizzas and pasta and cookies and all the things. It's not just bread. Everything we do fresh milled and.
Fresh milk. Yes. Huh, okay. So tell us then. So you noticed right away, less snacking, constipation gone. Why should we be constipated? So anyway, and then just less frequent illnesses. And then what did you begin to notice about Sutton?
So about 6 months after, we noticed like she had not had a seizure, and we had an appointment with her neurologist. And when we were there, he was talking about how good she was doing, and I said, yeah. And I said, we started Fresh Milk Flour, and I just felt like it was really working. And his response to me, well, she is a kid, and I don't think you should be depriving her.
Oh, wow. Depriving her of what?
Yes, I was like, she was anything but deprived. She has homemade meals every night. I mean, we make cinnamon rolls and cookies and Cheez-Its, and
she is not deprived at all.
Like, if anything, she's very lucky as a kid. It really just kind of upset me. And
yeah.
Then so she, at this point now, she has been seizure free for 18 months. And so a few months ago, she had came to me and she said, Mom, I don't think I'm going to have any more seizures. And I just feel like that was God telling me that she had been healed, and
wow, that's amazing. So So she was having seizures, correct me if I'm wrong, even on the medication, she would still have
Yes. Yeah, we
seizures
had seizures about once a
once a month,
once a
even on
month. Yeah, maybe 2 months if we got lucky. And even on the meds, and they would change her meds. We would increase doses
yeah.
frequently, and she was still having them that wasn't doing anything. And
But then 6 months into making bread, you noticed no seizures. She's still on
yes,
the medication, but no seizures.
no seizures, right? Yes. And so
Wow.
then Edwards had mentioned I was there, and so we are now patients over at Veritas, and they are weaning her off of her seizure medication. She was taking 9 mils 2 times a day, and we're down to 2.5.
Wow.
Yes.
And she's down, but no seizures. Still no seizures.
Nope.
This is absolutely amazing.
Yeah, and we can see a change in her personality. Just it's
Oh yes. Oh yes.
not being on those medications. It's really just been an answered prayer.
Yes, we had a son that had seizures as well, and the medication totally changed his personality, and didn't help really. I mean, he was still having so many seizures. He had the petit mal type, so he would have them 10 a day, but just he'd go out for a minute and a half or so, and all they wanted to do was just change his medication, increase his medication, add another medication, but nothing really seemed to help. So we eventually pulled him off of all medication, and he just thrived. And he was almost like a zombie on these medicines.
Yes.
And he was my bright, bubbly child, and it was just so different. So taking him off, and we just lived with it, and he did outgrow them. It wasn't as drastic a change as you saw of going from, to no seizures, but he thrived so much more than he was on medication. But wow, what an amazing story. I just almost want to stop and have a praise and worship time here. This is because it's frightening when this is your child and you just don't know what to do, to see this drastic a change. And I'm just so happy that she's getting to wean off medication. And I love her little out of the mouths of babes. I'm done having seizures.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay. So now Sawyer's 4. Born with the brittle bone disease. I actually watched a movie recently about that. And what a life, not only for them, but for you. I mean, to live in that much, I don't want to say fear, because I don't want to, we don't want to live in fear, but that's a hard life. That's a hard life, not just for them, but for you, being so terrified of breaking her bones and wanting to protect her.
Yeah, you just never know from day to day. It felt like that for a while, but she has been break free for 18 months.
Wow. And she had how many breaks in her little 3 years of life?
In 3 years, she had 30.
30. Oh my. And even in utero and born with them.
Yes. Yeah. She spent more months in a cast than not. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So you really you weren't expecting the bread to help her.
No, we didn't expect that at all.
But it has.
I mean, I should say she does get Zometa infusions every 6 months at this point, and she has rods in both of her femurs. But we had breaks with those rods. That doesn't completely mean the bone around those rods is still weak. You can still break with the rods. So it's not. But back in April, they replaced her rods. She had only been in her first set of rods for 1 year. And because she was growing so quickly, they told me that she would probably last in that first set of rods for 3 to 5 years. And after 1 year, they said she's outgrown them. And
this was after bread or
this
before?
was after bread, yes.
After bread, she started growing.
Yes, and I mentioned earlier that they had said that she may not walk, and she walks and she runs and she jumps and she plays and she does all the things now. And she's going to school. She doesn't seem like she's in any pain. She's just living her little happy life like all the other kids. And we just feel so blessed. And I just don't think it's coincidence.
No, I don't.
I can't prove that it's the bread, but It sure seems like it.
Yeah, I just always say you can't argue with somebody's testimony. I
Yes.
just always think of the young man that was born blind, and he goes, I don't know who healed me, but I'll tell you this, I was blind and now I see. So I
Yes.
don't know. Was it the bread? All I can tell you is she went from 30 breaks in 3 years to no breaks in 1 year of freshly milled flour and growing out,
Mhm.
growing. And that's absolutely amazing. Will it reverse it? And has it reversed it? No, right?
Right. Yeah. It's a genetic disorder. So, I mean, she'll probably always carry that with her. But if we're not breaking, then that's good with me.
Yes, yes. You know, I just think this is so fascinating, your story, and what a blessing. I bet everyone listening is as teary-eyed is as I am. And we've already touched on a little bit of, y'all went all in. How much bread do you eat? You eat it every day, every way, every meal, pasta, muffins, pancakes. And I often hear people say they can't get their kids to eat their bread or other things made with freshly milled flour, which is a bit foreign to me because my family loved it. I didn't have to coerce my children to eat it. I mean, they had their favorites. One child didn't like blueberry muffins and the other one did, but so that's different. But when we've done events over the years and served bread samples, it's the kids that keep coming back for more and more samples. So it always baffles me. So are there any family favorites that your family or your girls like the best? And any tips for young moms that maybe are struggling to get their kids or their family to eat the bread that you want to share?
My kids always loved it. They love pizza night. We do breakfast once a week. They love breakfast night. Um, they really they like everything, and their little friends that come over, they like it, and we never had any problems. And I just, for moms, I say go for it. It's the best thing you can do. And I just bread. It did bring us healing, I believe, but it does so much more. It's my when I'm making bread, it's kind of my quiet time, and it has brought us together as a family. We cook together. We about once a week we get with my parents and we cook, and they pitch in too. If I'm busy that week, they'll pitch in and help make some snacks or something. And my mother-in-law, she's always made all their birthday cakes, and so now she comes over. We make them with fresh milk flour, and that's just a special time together. And I think that it brings a lot of memories with your kids. And I also think that it opens a door to talk about the goodness of God and eating the way that He intended for us to do. And
Yeah, yeah. And we found that that true as well. I mean, we have a large family, and so like I said, I just, this is the way we ate, but it was funny when their friends came over, they were always amazed, and I didn't ever have any one of them go, "Oh, I don't like your bread or your pancakes." In fact, they were like, "Oh my gosh, this is so good."
yes.
Yeah, that's what we noticed anyway. You shared something I'm trying to find the scripture. You might hear me flipping through my Bible, but it just reminded me. And I love that you're sharing your bread and it's an opportunity, and I think it's so interesting. And I know I've shared this on the podcast before, but companion actually means with bread. So bread is made to be shared, and it is in 1 Timothy chapter 4 is talking about the end times when people will come and they'll teach you all these things that aren't right. And in verse 3, it says, they forbid marriage and advocate abstaining from foods which God has created to be gratefully shared by those who believe and have a clear knowledge of the truth. And isn't that so fascinating that bread is so demonized? And yet this tells us and warns us, they're going to tell you to not eat this bread that God created to be shared. So that's just always intrigued me. I always tell people you can make a hamburger and, just one and eat it all by yourself. You can eat a banana or an apple all by yourself, but you're not going to make just one roll or one pancake. You make
Yes.
enough to share with other people. So I'm so glad you brought that aspect of it into your life. And it really is, it is very fulfilling and very satisfying. You have an amazing testimony, your family, and especially for your girls. I'm just rejoicing with you. And I would imagine that everyone listening is wiping a few tears and praising the Lord just as I am. And you've already shared a little bit, but are there any final words of encouragement that you would like to leave our listeners with today that might encourage them?
I would just say when God speaks to you, just listen, even if it seems hard. If I can do this, you can too. And I had a Bible verse written in my notes. I keep like little medical notes in my phone, and I had a Bible verse written, and it was Romans 8:18, and it says, For I consider that the suffering of this present time are not worth comparing with the glory that is to be revealed to us."
Amen. Amen. Hallelujah. Thank you. I often wonder, I think in some versions it says these light and momentary afflictions. And, listening to you, I'm not sure I'd put that into light and momentary afflictions category, but you're right. I mean, the glory that's going to be revealed, it's incomparable. So, Kayleah, thank you so much for sharing your very personal story with everyone today. And I know it has encouraged many who are listening. And I hope her story and her daughter's story has inspired and encouraged you that are listening. I was thinking about this as you were talking, and even this morning preparing for our time together. I regularly get questions asking whether this bread will help specific health issues. And I'm, of course, not a doctor, so I cannot answer that question. Is this going to reverse her brittle bone disease? Is this going to reverse, I got one yesterday, a brain tumor. All I can say is, I don't know, but this is what I do know and what I can say. Bread made from freshly milled whole grains and a diet of real whole foods like whole grains and beans can help improve your overall health. And it reminded me of a message I got from a lady years ago. And it was a mom whose son had cystic fibrosis. A common problem among these patients, she explained to me, is chronic constipation with severe bowel blockages causing frequent medical interventions, like where they have to go in the hospital and get this taken care of. This mom wrote to tell me that the bread had relieved her son of this chronic issue. She urged me to reach out to the cystic fibrosis support groups and said, they got to know this. And so what it spoke to me then, did it reverse his cystic fibrosis? No, but it did relieve and help a chronic issue with this disease. And that's what I thought of when I thought of your little girl with the brittle bone disease. So we rejoice that it has so improved her quality of life and her ability to walk and run and grow, to simply grow. And then your little one, we're reversing that one. Okay.
Yes.
That's amazing to me. So, will it reverse your health issues? Some share stories that yes, it has. And I think your two little girls are a great example of this, while others simply find great improved quality of life. So I just want to leave my listeners with this thought today. Whatever you need, this I can say, God gave us bread to sustain and nourish us. And what a good God to give us such deliciousness. I mean, it tastes good. Bread should be our staff of life, but not just any bread made from freshly milled whole grains. Kayleah, thank you so much again for sharing your story. And may you and your family be blessed beyond measure. And I thought of this verse in thinking of you. Proverbs 11:25 says that he who refreshes others will himself be refreshed. I have a feeling that your story of your two girls has refreshed others today. So thank you for sharing.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
You are very, very welcome. So until next time, this is Sue Becker from Bread Beckers with Sue's Healthy Minutes.
Sue's Healthy Minutes podcast has been a presentation by the Bread Beckers Incorporated, located in Woodstock, Georgia. For more information, store hours, and learning opportunities, visit breadbeckers.com and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast and never miss an episode. Share this with 2 friends who would benefit from this information, and be sure to join us again next week for more of Sue's Healthy Minutes.